And now I have the honor to introduce World Wildlife Fund, specifically Matt McFall, who is a program officer with WWF's private sector engagement team. Matt manages and coordinates commodity and water risk research for engagements with companies and their supply chains. Since joining World Wildlife Fund in 2011, he has helped develop WWF's Supply Risk Analysis, a tool that analyzes the environmental and socioeconomic risks associated with commodity production and supports corporate engagements on agricultural supply chain projects. He is also part of the team that developed the Water Risk Filter, an online tool for assessing corporate water risks. Without further ado, Matt, please take over.
So, hi everybody, my name is Matt McFall. As Caitlin said, I work at World Wildlife Fund on the private sector engagement team, and my primary role is working on supply chains and sustainable sourcing with our corporate partners. And so I'll be talking a little bit about WWF and how we do that, and then more the supplier risk analysis tool that I manage and how that can help with our sustainable sourcing goals. Apologies also, I have a bit of a cold if I sound a little strange, so I'll just power through. So to start out with, I just wanted to go through kind of our markets theory and our approach. And so the markets team, the market transformation initiative was developed about 4 or 5 years ago, and the idea being that we wanted to have a strategic focus and look at the markets and the commodities specifically that affect our priority places that we work to conserve. And so an analysis and sort of a strategizing was done back then to figure out which commodities have the greatest impacts in the priority places that WWF is most concerned with conserving. And so you can see some of the examples here that, you know, these 6 different places and some of the commodities that are most impactful. So you're looking at soy and cattle in the Amazon. That's an obvious one. Everyone's heard about palm oil in Indonesia. But there's also ones like cotton in India, which has a lot of water impacts, both consumption and pollution, along with a lot of your seafood commodities that impact the Arctic and the various. Next slide. So this visualization is our champagne glass. It kind of illustrates our theory of change and the strategy that we use to engage. And so our focus is not on the persuading 6 billion consumers or, you know, the billion-plus producers, but the bottleneck in the supply chain that is controlled by actually relatively few companies. There's high concentration there, as you guys all know. And so a lot of our focus is in this area, specifically on retailers, buyers, and brands. That's where we've been had the most engagement. And we also have a sustainable finance team that works on sustainable investments, responsible investment. And so this is sort of this is how because WWF has limited resources, and so we have to prioritize and strategize and figure out where we can sort of get the most bang for our buck. And this is also the nature of the supply chains nowadays, that they're so highly concentrated. So this is our priority 15 commodities. So about half of them are agricultural commodities, and then you also have seafood and pulp and paper and timber, so forest products. So these are the 15 that were identified that have the greatest impact to the priority areas that we want to conserve. Next slide. And there was also an exercise going through to identify which companies are the primary buyers and producers of these key commodities. And so this is just a sampling of those companies that are buying commodities from those places. And so, you know, a lot of them obviously repeat each other. You know, Nestle, Cargill, Wilmar, etc. So those are your sort of big traders, but they're also those are also suppliers to your big retailers like McDonald's, General Mills, Coca-Cola, etc. whom we also try to work with. Next slide. And so one of the primary things that WWF has done through this market transformation initiative is helped develop a lot of the roundtables and certification schemes that are out there. So this is a sampling of those that WWF has been a founding stakeholder in, and some of them are more mature than others. You're looking at FSC, MSC, and then some are still developing, like the Global Roundtable for Sustainable Beef and the Alliance for Water Stewardship. And I believe BCI was also one that the WWF was a large part of. And I'll talk a little bit. I don't have all the details regarding the principles and criteria and all the information around each of these standards, but I could talk a little bit about the focusing on beef and cotton, which I believe was an interest of some of the panelists, some of the participants here. Next slide. So GRSB is a global multi-stakeholder initiative, and the goal here is to develop a global standard for sustainable beef, which is very challenging because of the various production systems that beef is produced in around the world. And so it's not perhaps as prescriptive, from what I understand, as some of the others. Like, I know Better Cotton is very prescriptive on production practices, and its goal is better production, or better production practices, and there's not necessarily a certification going with BCI. But the GRSB is still in development, and it's one of the most ambitious certification schemes. But if anybody's interested in learning more, I can direct you to the folks at WWF that would know more than that. So, next slide. BCI is another one of the roundtables that WWF helped develop. A lot of the focus here has been in India and South Asia, and there's been a lot of success in Pakistan and India getting cotton farmers to adopt better cotton practices. And so it's a little bit different than some of the other certification systems like RSPO or FSC, where it doesn't necessarily have a certification, but it's more of a process for farmers to work on better production. And so if anybody was interested in learning more about any of the initiatives that were on that previous slide, feel free to let me know. I can direct any queries to those that we know. So this slide here is illustrating our sustainable sourcing process and how we work with companies and the strategy and the sort of way we go about looking at sustainable sourcing. It's a sort of a stepwise approach. So the first step being knowledge and awareness, which is actually what I'm going to talk a little bit more about today, because that's primarily what I work on. And following that, there's strategy development and sort of say risk mitigation activities we work with companies on. And then furthermore, there's obviously participating in roundtables, buying certified goods, working more closely with suppliers, etc. And then eventually, the idea being monitoring and evaluating the effectiveness of those standards and ensuring that they're indeed sustainable and responsible. Next slide. So the next few slides, I just wanted to show illustrating that we do focus on the production level of these commodities rather than, say, the entire supply chain. And that is primarily due to the fact that the majority of impacts, for example, greenhouse gases, occur at the production level. Certainly for livestock, that is the case, and even for the majority of your crops, it's also the case. Next one. This is just also illustrating that the same goes for water. The majority of the water footprint in a product is from the production, from the crop itself, and all the irrigation water and rainwater that's used to produce it. Next. And again, this is illustrating that biodiversity and sort of expansion and land use issues are primarily obviously associated with the production level. This is just an illustration of soy area in Brazil and its overlap with WWF's priority areas. And so this is part of what we look at in determining which of the commodities are our priorities, and then what are sort of the hotspot issues within each of those areas that they're growing. You can go to the next one. So I'll talk a little bit about what I primarily do. So this is our supply risk analysis tool. This is something that I helped develop over the last 3 years or so, and we use this as our initial engagement with companies. So it fits in the step one of that sustainable sourcing process. And this is just a simple risk matrix we use. So we look at probability and severity for a given issue. So for example, if you're looking at, let's say, soy in Brazil, and you're looking at deforestation as one of the issues or the indicators, then you would look at what is the probability that soy is associated with deforestation in Brazil, and then what is the severity of that impact from deforestation. And so this is just a simple risk matrix, and we have a red, yellow, green scoring system that we use to highlight hotspot issues within production. Next slide. So these are some of the criteria that we look at when doing this supply risk analysis. So we look at both sort of threats to production systems. So let's say climate change, pest and disease pressures, like environmental threats. We also look at issues within a country, so corruption, political stability, human rights, just to look at the risks of sourcing from countries with that are politically unstable or highly corrupt. And we also look at, in the environmental and social categories, the impacts from production on the environment, on societies and communities. And so, each of these has sub-indicators. There's approximately 50 plus, 58 or so indicators we have that fit into these 4 themes and these 30 criteria. So it's a holistic risk analysis that we, because we know that a lot of companies already do this, but they may only be looking at some of the supply security concerns and the economic risk. And so we believe that a holistic approach is the most appropriate for identifying where are the hotspots and what are the sort of where can you prioritize your efforts in engaging with your supply chain. Next slide. This is just an example output. So in each of these columns, you would see, like, let's say, a country commodity combination. So for example, Brazil soy, Brazil beef, Brazil cotton, and Brazil corn. You could look at 4 different combinations for Brazil and sort of see the different issues associated with, or the risks from production for different commodities in one country. You could also look at different the same commodity for multiple countries, and so this just provides a simple way to illustrate and visualize where some of the risks are. Next. This slide is illustrating that our goal is not necessarily to push companies away from sourcing in high-risk areas, but to get companies to look to mitigating these impacts, turning red to green. So we're looking at market transformation and not necessarily just avoidance of risk. And so this is where we would encourage companies to either join roundtables, help initiate roundtables. It could be other strategies such as long-term contracts or just different business structural issues that could be looked at in terms of mitigating risk. And so that turning red to green is kind of our theme when it goes to that. And these are just, I'm not going to go through all the, you can go to the next slide. I'm not going to go through all of the examples here, but these are just different examples from the sort of the process, sustainable sourcing process, stepwise approach that companies can look at in terms of mitigating some of the risks that we highlight. I'll let you guys look at that offline. Next slide. Again, we're looking for transformational and not just transactional supply chains. So we're sort of we want companies to be more engaged with their suppliers, learning more about where their products come from, what are the issues associated with the production on the ground from those places, and investing in those supply chains. So our goal is sort of getting sustainability to be pre-competitive. That's something our team has emphasized over the years. And the final slide. I just wanted to highlight some developments that are coming up in our team, our supply risk analysis team. We actually have about 5 or 6 folks in the WFUS office, as well as colleagues in the Netherlands, Germany, and Netherlands and Germany, who are part of our Supplier Risk Analysis global team now, and we're developing a website. So this will be a site for the public and other companies to learn more about our Supplier Risk Analysis tool, how we use it to engage with companies on their supply chains, and how we can look and work on sustainable sourcing with them. So this is coming out in April 2014, and if you are interested in learning more about the website or the tool, or in general about our sustainable sourcing process, feel free to contact me. And if you want to learn more about any of the initiatives we work with, you can contact me and I'll put you in touch with the relevant parties. I believe that's it. So I'll send it back to Caitlin and we can do questions at the end. So thank you.
Thank you, Matt, for giving us an overview of some of WWF's work. And I think it's interesting to learn or to remind ourselves that all of those materials and ingredients that go into our products really do affect these natural areas that are so important to us and the earth.